So today I feel so honored to introduce to us a couple that means so much to this church, not just Nairobi, but East Africa by extension. They've been very supportive to us over the years. They've dedicated their lives into meeting our needs. And today we are honored because they are here right now to support our marriages. They've been married for 41 years. They've been in the ministry for 42 years. So we have a lot to learn from them today. So without any further ado, let me introduce to us Rick and Lynn Overturf.
Well, thank you. And guys, I think this is amazing. Mike, thanks so much for the song. If that doesn't set the tone and the mood, I don't know what will. There is something y'all need to know about that song. They were lip syncing that song. They didn't really sing it. That was me and Lynn singing. So, apologies to Lionel and Diana, but, it wasn't really them. So, wow, we had a fantastic time in the North today. Loved it. Beautiful day here in Nairobi. Love being with you guys. We're going to jump right in here in a minute. I'll let Lynn say a word or two, and then we'll talk about intimacy.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be with you, and we are just so thrilled. Thank you for asking us to do this. This only puts a little pressure on. We're going to do our very best from our years of experience in our own marriage and our ministry, which obviously sounded like a lot of years, as George said. But we are very grateful to be here with you guys. And I just want to mention, as we talk about these things, that we all come from such different backgrounds. Some of us come from different worlds. We hope that what we have to share will translate in Kenya, but we all have a family of origin. Some of our families were more loving, and some were more stern, and we have siblings, and we have experiences that we all bring into our marriages. So there's no way to be able to meet every need individually, because every person is different. But what we can do in our marriages is try to learn how we can study our partner and try to understand what makes our marriage work. So hopefully we can give you some principles to help that along.
So, when we talk about intimacy, that can go a lot of different places. We're going to kind of combine, we're going to talk mostly about sex. That's what we're going to do. So all the brothers said amen. I get it. So, although we'll branch out and go a little bit further than that into things that create intimacy, because they're not identical. One involves the other. So be aware as we talk, we understand they didn't, say talk specifically about this. So we'll take a little liberty. So let's start by just thinking about this conversation. If you think about sexuality, the world has messed this up so much. I think we do need to teach on it more. I think in a great sense, we need to go to the world and say, you don't know what you're doing with sexuality and with intimacy. God does, and we need to go take it back. We need to have an aggressive attitude of teaching and preaching and saying, guys, this is a beautiful thing created by God, but the world is the one that's messed it all up. And we might even be uncomfortable tonight. That's why I don't see your faces, because it's like, good, I'm going to listen to this when nobody can see my face or reaction. But I think it should be a strength, not only in our marriages, but it should be a strength in our churches. And the longer and longer we are married, the better and better we should be at intimacy. Sam Lang, a dear friend, of course, who passed away, used to say, why waste honeymoons on rookies? Give it to us experienced people. So I hope we're all here tonight to go, wherever we are, let's get better. Let's love learning together and talking openly about something that is just amazing. Now, when I think about this, and this is a great example of it, we're doing it right now. Anytime something has the potential for good, it has at least an equal potential for evil. And you know what Satan's going to do? He's going to take anything that God made that is good and he's going to try to turn it into evil. We're doing it right now. There's this amazing thing called the internet. Though we have glitches at times and, it's a little bit difficult, it can be an amazing thing. We can teach, we can connect. I've had, I don't know how many Zoom meetings with the leadership here in Nairobi, and that wouldn't be possible. So we have to acknowledge, wow, what a blessing. But at the same time, we have a world that is addicted to pornography. Social media is wrecking people's lives, particularly teenagers. There's addiction. And so we see, boy, it could be such a great thing. Can you imagine the Apostle Paul being able to zoom around the world? I think he would look at us and go, guys, look at the land of privilege you're living in, but with it comes some challenges. Well, sexuality is the same way. It has the potential to be the most wonderful thing on the face of the earth, to bond us together, to just be something great, or it can become a source of hurt in our marriage. It can become a source of division in our marriage. If we allow Satan to take it and to twist it and to turn it and to mess it up. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to share 5 things that we think are essentials to intimacy. Like I said, some of them will be a little bit more specific to the physical relationship. And then after that, we're just going to open up for a few questions. I don't even know what the time allotted is, but I don't tend to speak real long. So rest assured, you will have plenty of time at the end to go put into practice the things that we talk about tonight. All right. So the essentials of intimacy. Number 1 is this: to celebrate God's creativity. I'm going to ask a kind of a weird question. Maybe it's weird to start this discussion off. When we think about sexuality, tell me, what is the most important sex organ there is? Yeah, nobody wants to answer that. I get that. That's okay. You know what it is? There you go. And the counselor, of course. It's the brain. It's the mind.
Yeah.
And if we don't
Yeah.
set our mindset right, everything else we're going to talk about is really not helpful. So let's do this. Let's take a moment, turn over to the book of Genesis, chapter 1, and we're going to look in verse 27. I'm going to read all of these. If you don't have your Bible handy, it's okay. The Bible says, so God created man in his own image, and in the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. We live in a world that's even confused about that. Our country, especially, is even confused about such a simple thing. But he concludes this section down in verse 31, and he says this: as he did with every day of creation, God saw that all that he had made, and it was very good. Part of what God created is male and female. And I'm pretty sure the last time you look, we aren't the same. We are different. And God said, that's a good thing. I created it that way. Embrace that. Enjoy that. And even when it comes to sexuality, think about this. God could have said, sexuality is for procreation, so just do it and babies will come along. And then my question follows, then why did he make it feel so good? Because he's a creative, amazing God. I mean, I'm sitting here looking out at a beautiful day, and there's so many things. God is not dull. We're about to enter the fall season in North Carolina, and the leaves change, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. That's who God is. And this subject we're talking about, the human body is a part of that creation. Now, why that's important is this. Some of us grew up with some, well, let me use the word weird, certainly unbiblical views of sexuality. And it's important then for us to deal with those things in our mind and to develop the right attitude towards this beautiful creation that God gave us. One of the indicators of that is how little we tend to talk about sexuality. And that boggles my mind sometimes. And so you have these weird teachings. If you just take maybe the Catholic Church and you look at some of the things that they have said and taught, you know, sex is only for procreation, the perpetual virginity of Mary, priests can't marry, but in my Bible, to be a bishop, you had to get married. And by the way, look at all that has happened in the Catholic Church because of a warped view of sexuality. Priests can't marry, and the world is full of millions of kids that have been sexually abused. There's repercussions when we don't get the right mindset to the way that God created sexuality. Look at the book of Song of Solomon in the Bible. Wow. I wrote a paper in college. Where's my dear brother teacher here, called the Antilegomena of the Old Testament. That's a big fancy word, and it simply means there were books of the Bible that early folks that were putting together the canon said this shouldn't be in the Bible. And Song of Solomon was one of those because of its sexual content. Most of the book is about intimacy. Now it's written in a way that's very literary, and you gotta piece through some of it to really understand. But there's some things in Song of Solomon that are just wow. Having sex all night long, having sex outdoors. The brothers are all going to be having their quiet times on Song of Solomon tomorrow morning, I know. So God put it in the Bible. We've got to embrace and be good with talking to one another, opening up about sexuality, because it's an amazing creation of God. Everything God says that he made was good. If you look at Song of Solomon and you just go read, well, I'm going to read it for you. I'm going to start in verse 2 of chapter 7, because this is an illustration of how we have to get comfortable talking about these things and resetting what might be some false things in our minds about sexuality. Just listen to what God said. And I'm going to pick up, well, let me start in verse 1 just so that I, capture the whole thing. How beautiful your sandaled feet, O prince daughter. Your graceful legs are like jewels, the work of a craftsman's hands. Your navel is a rounded goblet that never lacks blended wine. Your waist is a mound of wheat encircled by lilies. Your breasts are like two fawns, two twins of a gazelle. Your neck is like an ivory tower, and he goes on. Do we embrace this? Do we celebrate it? By the way, when you go back to verse 2, when he says your waist is a mound of wheat encircled by lilies, he's not talking about her waist, people. This book is intimate. God wrote it. It's an illustration of something that we have to deal with, particularly if we go, ooh, sex. I don't really want to talk about that. I'm uncomfortable with it. We need to start right there and be willing to say, okay, I want to celebrate God's creativity. By the way, I'm reading out of Song of Solomon, chapter 7, and that was verses 1 through 4. Song of Solomon 7, 1 through 4. I'll give you another illustration of this. We had a couple, he's an elder in the church in Orlando. And this illustrates, and this may be a cultural thing that we struggle with a little bit, but I think most of us struggle to talk to our kids about sexuality. In fact, many times we wait till they are coming towards puberty or something in order to have, as we would say, the talk and talk to them about sexuality. Well, we had this couple come and they did this fantastic workshop called Teaching Your Kids About Sex. And what they were teaching us is you need to start teaching your kids at a very early age appropriate stuff, so that they think of sexuality as something really beautiful that God created. Yes, it's only for married people and all the parameters. And then every time you have this conversation as they get older, of course, the conversation gets detailed more and more in depth. But here's one of the things he pointed out that I think is awesome. He said, you know what that makes you? You become the expert. You, as parents, become the expert in their lives, not the school system, not their friends, because if you don't talk to them about it, they're going to hear it. And that was very convicting, because it's like, wow, we don't do a good job of teaching our kids about the amazing creativity of God, and that our bodies, though different, are something to be celebrated in the right way, on the right scale as we're talking. But that was a workshop a lot of our folks still talk about because it changed some of their thinking. Okay, you got anything you want to add to that?
I think as often as women, we're the ones that have to work more on setting our minds, dealing maybe with our past or with just wanting to have that closeness, that intimacy, that creativity in our relationship in all areas, because I think we can be very easily distracted by what's going on around us. We have children and we have jobs and we have a lot of things going on. I think it probably comes a bit more naturally for our husbands to embrace the connectivity that God wants us to have. And I think we're the ones sometimes that can kind of put the brakes on and hold back. And maybe we'll talk more about this, but I think it leads into maybe being more selfish with our emotions and our minds. So I think we have to find ways to get help to deal with maybe hurts from the past, or just being able to set our minds on having a great and close marriage.
Okay, so let's go to principle number 2. The first principle is celebrate God's creativity. Get your mind right. Secondly, great sex is shared, not selfish. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, starting in verse 3. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife. That is not taking out the garbage. That's not what that's talking about. We know what it's talking about. And likewise, the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife. There's a big, in America, there's a phrase that people use a lot, and it shows you because we don't understand God's way. And it comes out when we're talking about things like abortion or, whatever. Women will say, well, it's my body and I get to do with it what I want to do. And it comes out in transsexual behavior and a lot of other ways. and they're missing the principle that God has taught us. When you are married, your body is not yours alone. And I like the way he adds the word alone, because it is your body and there are responsibilities with your body, but it's not your body alone. And so when we start thinking about sexuality, you cannot go into the sexual relationship saying, well, I need to get what I want, and that's all that matters. And let's be honest, without good discipling and training, particularly I think for men, because we are so physical oriented, we can be very selfish at times. And it can be about what I want. And when I get what I want, I'm done. That's not God's view of sexuality. We need to enter it giving to one another so that we're not feeling like we've got to match up to some, standard of the world. It's what satisfies both of us. Now I realize, and we all understand this, not every time are the stars going to shoot through the sky, you know. Just like when you make a meal, sometimes you just think, man, that is the best meal I've ever put in my mouth. And then other times, even though you made the same meal, you go, oh, it wasn't my best. And guys, that happens in a marriage, particularly sexually. And we have to be okay with that, because if we can share in that, we can actually end up laughing about it. There are sometimes that it's just not going to work. I think one of the other things that comes into play, we've been married 41 years. Age becomes a factor, disabilities become a factor, and it really begins to complicate things. And you have to go, I need to give lots of attention then to making sure that I'm not being selfish, but that we're coming together, even in spite of difficulties. And we'll talk about that a little bit more under another section in a little bit. But here's the thing. We owe it to each other to be our best. Remember what Paul says. It is your body, but not your body alone. So part of not being selfish is to say, I want to make myself the best version of Rick I can be. Take care of yourself. Present yourself as thinking about the other person, not just, well, I'm tired, I don't want to shower. Or blah, we can go through a whole list of things. Now listen, let's don't get carried away with this and become self-conscious with the way God made us. Not everybody's good. And this is where we mess up sometimes, because we try to make ourselves look like what we see on TV. And that doesn't work. And you see some model and they don't look that good anyway. It's all the makeup and all of this and the that. That's not what I'm saying. And people can really get messed up and self-conscious when they're taking that the wrong way. But we need to really present ourselves as someone who is caring about the other person. Great sex is shared, not selfish.
Again, I think as women, it's important for us to set our minds to give. It's easy to want our needs met first, and we'll talk about those as we go a little bit more. Sometimes what our needs are real needs, our perceived needs, and we need to really focus on the other person. I think sometimes we can punish our husbands for being a man, for being made men. Maybe that's because we've been hurt by a dad or some other person, and we can take that out. Our husbands were made to be a certain way and to be visual and to be and maybe a little bit more of the pursuer. And so we need to learn who we need to become to balance out and become the counterpart, and not just want to take.
So, number 3, let's jump to that one, because this one backs off the sexuality part a little bit and creates more intimacy. that in our homes, there has principle number three, there has to be an atmosphere of fun and affection. Um, we both grew up, I think Lynn's family probably more. Um, Ours was a very active and close family. Lynn's family is just a, they laugh a lot. And I mean, until the day they all died, they're making fun, they're laughing, having a great time. I can remember being with Lynn's mom when she was very sick, but she still on her deathbed was still laughing. And I think one of the things we miss sometimes is that atmosphere, the overall atmosphere. I'm not talking about, oh, I want sex to happen tonight, so let's make home fun and yay. I'm talking about all of the time. We're all going to go through things. I know that there will be difficult times. As I said, this morning, we just buried my mom back in April. But even at her funeral, we laughed a lot. There was a lot of joy in the house. Um, our homes need to be characterized by laughter and affection. We talk about this a whole lot with our youth and family ministry, what we now call our family ministry, because I think it's a huge deal with kids. And by the way, they need to see the affection of mom and dad. We need to be affectionate with our kids. Now, we're not going to be, R-rated or X-rated as we count movies in the US. Um, but it doesn't hurt every now and if the kids go, ooh, stop. They need to see the affection that we have in an appropriate way between husband and wife, between their parents. Now, as we said, challenges will come. When I turned 40, or while I was 40, I had a heart attack, a major heart attack, what they call a widowmaker. Lynn, 4 years later?
46. I was 46.
6 years later, got diagnosed with breast cancer. We spent, I don't know how many times driving back and forth to Florida, burying all of my grandparents. We buried Lynn's sister. We buried Lynn's dad. Um, Lynn had, in the meantime we were pregnant and boy, that changes sexuality a lot. Having kids around changes the atmosphere in the home. We're enjoying being empty nesters again because there's nobody around in our house. So, yay, whoopee. So we understand, guys, you're going to go through things, and we talk about an atmosphere of joy and fun and laughter, but that helps us. Um, it helps us in our sexuality and our intimacy because fun is just home is a fun place to be. I'll illustrate it this way. When you're going to have sex, where would you rather have it? On a garage floor or a storage room floor, or would you rather be in a beautiful setting in a nice hotel or your bedroom that has Lionel Richie and Diana Ross singing and candles going? You will go, well, of course, Rick, the second one. Even us guys would have said, well, what does that demonstrate? Atmosphere matters. And so let's build atmosphere, even non-sexual atmosphere, in our homes. Atmosphere is an all-day thing, not a, nighttime kind of thing. So think about your household. Is there a lot of griping? Is the way we talk to one another short, terse, unkind? That's a sex killer. Are we working so much that we're so tired when we come home that we just don't have the energy? Do we allow schedules and money pressures? And that list just begins to snowball. Do we allow those things then to create an atmosphere of tension in our homes? That's an intimacy killer. Um, Husbands, make your wife feel special, particularly if you've got younger kids and she's been taking care of them all day long, and you come home with sex on your mind, and she's just trying to get dinner fixed and the kids to bed and this and that. You need to step in, help her, do the dishes, take out that garbage, whatever you need to do to create that atmosphere that says, I care about you. I want an atmosphere that you will enjoy, and see what that doesn't do to your relationship.
I mentioned in a class yesterday to some of the leaders that we have a phrase in the US, I don't know if it translates here, but we have a phrase that says, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And I think in a lot of ways, as women, we do set the tone in our homes. And sometimes we can be very hard to please. I was very fortunate to be raised with a mom who set a great tone in our home. She showed respect for my dad. They laughed a lot. They were affectionate. Um, there were hard times in their lives, but it did not change the tone in our home when the pressure was on. My dad was a preacher, and there were a lot of challenging church things. The atmosphere and the tone did not change, and that helps me now as as an adult to look back and appreciate that. So I think we can emotionally, I think most of us, and it's not always true, but generally speaking, I think as women, we carry more of the emotional stuff that we bring into our families. How am I doing at setting a great tone, a peaceful, calm, joyful home that our children want to be a part of? And they love being there, and our husbands want to come home. I want my husband to want to come home after a busy day to me, and not to feel like he's going to walk in the door and I'm going to unload all my emotion and frustration on him. I need to work that out with God. And then we can talk and share those things. But the tone, I think, is important.
Yes. And I think for us brothers, how we speak to our wives has a lot to do with the atmosphere and the tone of our home. If we speak down to them, um, that's an intimacy killer. We need to speak and have a tone that is uplifting, that is encouraging, that this is my partner, not, not my live-in maid. And, when I want sex, then I get it. That'll kill it. But I do think that's a struggle for a lot of guys. We have to challenge brothers sometimes to go, bro, you really need to think about how you speak to your wife. It just has an edge to it that's hurtful. And that's,
yeah, and vice versa. Same for the women.
oh, sure.
We can be very critical and negative and have a tone with our husbands, and we can talk to them like one of our children sometimes, and that does not help build up the intimacy in our marriage.
Okay, let's talk about number 4. The number 4 principle of intimacy and of great sex is true connection, where we are connected to one another. So we know, Lynn alluded to it a while ago, men are eager for sex, women are eager for romance. There's nothing really wrong with that. That is the way God created us. Men are more the aggressor. Men are much more visual. God said, I made it and I made it good. So let's embrace that. But then what we have to do is making sure that in that we don't become disconnected, because we are actually wired differently. And so it takes a lot of work to find the right connection. Now, I think, and we're going to divert here just for a second, I think the thing that prohibits connection the most will be things like this, and we'll run through a quick list because it shows we're not connected. One is unresolved conflict. We're going to have our arguments. We're going to have our tense times. We're going to have our fights, whatever you want to call it. They're going to happen. And we may talk and talk, but if you don't bring things to resolution, then connection breaks. Oh, we're in the same house. We may begin to speak to one another, okay, but there's still that lingering disconnect because we're unresolved in that conflict and in that problem. And I would say that constitutes a majority of even sexual problems between a couple when there's unresolved conflict. Now we'll talk, I mean, you can take that a lot of places. That could be some hurts from the past. So let's dig into that a little bit. One of the things that we're seeing more and more is abuse in every kind of form you can imagine. It could be a husband pointing his finger in his wife's face. That's so degrading. We've had situations of husband pushing or even acting like they're going to slap a wife. We've had actual cases of abuse where a woman was pushed, bruised, and it just keeps getting worse. And you know that these things can go further and further and further. And every kind of abuse, whatever form, will kill connection. Now, and I started to say for some of the sisters, but it includes brothers too. Some of us come from backgrounds where something happened to us at an early age. We typically think of women, but I'll tell you, I'm finding more and more there were men who were abused by an uncle sexually. And that, boy, that brings layers into your marriage and into your life that really prohibit great connection. And that's where I would say you need professional help. And don't be afraid to get that because you'll never really connect until you are at peace within yourself about, though it was not your fault, that you've come to peace and terms with. Now you can connect with your husband or your wife. And I can't tell you the number of people that we've been with that they were married 20 years before the husband knew the wife was molested at an early age, or that the husband had some sexual encounter with another man. And and if it's still up here in your mind, you may get here, but you're never going to get here. And we could make a long, long list of verbal abuse, even things that have hurt us that prevent connection. And we need to talk about these things. We need to preach about them. We need to teach about them. Sometimes we just shrug our shoulders at stuff we see in the world and think that it's acceptable behavior for a disciple of Jesus. Remember the story in 1 Corinthians 5 in the indignation Paul had with the church there because a man's got his father's wife? What are you thinking, people? Can you imagine the scars that presents in someone's life? And so we've got to be in tune and sensitive to those, not just in our own lives, but as we counsel, as we teach, as we help these young people get married. We typically in premarital counseling talk about some of these things because we understand if they can't work through this, they're going to have a hard time connecting in their marriage. We're wired differently, and we need to appreciate that. That just makes that connection all the harder. And then if you add layers to it, like abuses and things that are hurting people, we're not going to connect. And then what's going to happen? Intimacy, sexuality is going to suffer.
Okay.
Keep going. That was the keep
going.
going sign.
Keep going.
All right, the last one. Intimacy has to be a priority. I love this verse in Song of Songs. Back to Song of Songs, or some people call it Song of Solomon. Much of it is attributed to him. Chapter 1, verse 4. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. And the brothers again said, Amen. Let the king bring me into his chamber. This is the woman talking. And she says, let us hurry. Intimacy has got to be in it. You can read chapter 3 and verse 1. Chapter 7, maybe I will go back to that. Yeah, let me read that. I just think it's just listen to the desire here. Listen to the hurry, come on attitude that both lovers have. This is Song of Songs 7, starting in verse 11. Come, my lover, let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages. Let us go early to the vineyards, to see if the vines have budded. You need to do some study on this because I don't think he's really talking about vines and buds that are on the trees. If their blossoms have opened and if the pomegranates are in bloom, is it time? Are we ready? There I will give you my love. Wow. The mandrakes sent out their fragrance, and at our door is every delicacy, both new and old, that I have stored up for you, my lover. Do you get the idea here? That sex has to become a priority. It's not just, well, okay, it's, I want to give love. Let's be in a hurry for it. So we have a word, a phrase. I don't know if it translates. We call it charity sex. That means like, well, it's my duty. So, okay, here we go. That's degrading. That's not helpful. In fact, that hurts sexuality more than it helps because we don't have our heart into it. Now, again, keep in mind what I said earlier. Not every day and every time is fireworks and the most amazing thing in all of the world. There will be times that it happens, it was good, but it wasn't great. Okay. And that's natural and that's going to happen. But what we're talking about here is our attitude that we can't be so busy, so tired that we can't be excited and say, hurry to my love, rather than, well, okay. So sometimes that takes us working on our attitude and on our heart and making sex a priority. Now, one of the most common questions that comes up about this is, Rick, I hear what you're saying, but that would be twice a day if it were my husband. You're going to kill me here. So I understand that we have to have conversations about frequency and about going back to the point of, this is not about me getting for me. This is about what we jointly want. And that's what 1 Corinthians 7 teaches, coming together. Now, we typically say the greater need needs to answer the question. So you got to have that conversation. You got to feel good about your answer to that. There is no perfect answer. We always laugh, in America, they say that married couples have sex 2.3 times a week. And then we always respond by saying it's that 0.3 that's the problem. Listen, guys, whatever frequency that keeps you satisfied, that's what we're after. But let's have a heart and an attitude that says, let's hurry to love. Now, I'll give one last little parting shot on that. I reached for this a while ago. We need to learn to put these things down and turn the TVs off and put the schedule aside, because in America, I think that's one of the things that is killing intimacy is we are so preoccupied. I won't even say busy, because a lot of times it's just watching the TV, getting on the, social media. And the next thing you know, it's late at night and we're tired and we can't hurry to love because we haven't been disciplined. And our attitude is these other things are more important. We need to rebuild hurry to love back into our intimacy.
Um, I think especially for the women, just speaking for how women are made, I'm sure you've probably heard the illustration that men are microwaves and women are slow cookers. There's all those illustrations. We know that it doesn't take long or much for men to be in the mood and ready to go. I think as women, one, it helps us as women when we feel listened to and heard, and some of the other things we talked about earlier, when we feel a priority and that you're willing to help us with the children and with the dishes so that we're not so exhausted, because there's a lot of things to do around the home. And I think that helps us to feel appreciated and considered. But I think I get things in my mind that I need to talk about, and I cannot relax and enjoy physical intimacy often until I can get those things out, because they're running through my head and it's hard to stop and put that aside. And if I can have a little time to talk, to feel heard, to feel connected, I can have so much more to give. I think it's also important to understand that um, I know that husbands really want to please their wives. And I think sometimes it's like, okay, what is it? So on the women's side, I think it's important for us to learn to communicate what is makes us feel secure, what makes us enjoy our physical intimacy, um, so that our husbands know. But I think it's important for the husbands to know that it might be a variety of things. And what works today may not be the same thing that works next week. I'm not going to wear the same clothes every day. And I want a variety of clothes and shoes and handbags. So I think understanding variety is important to us, because I think sometimes a man will go, okay, this makes my wife happy. I'm going to do this every time. And you might get some pushback, you might get some resistance because, and sometimes we just don't know and we just need to work it out together. And women, I think that's how we can help our husbands, is learn to talk and talk about what we like and what we enjoy and what makes us feel secure. And it's it's a lifetime of marriage, of getting to know each other, to know our spouse and what that person needs and desires. We don't compare our marriages in that way to
Mm.
anyone else, because that is devastating to a marriage, because no one else is in this marriage except the two of us. This is our special place. And what makes my husband feel needed, important is important for me to learn, and vice versa. So I think it's just, again, that goes back to the communication and using our minds, setting our minds on things, because if I know that we need to have some great physical romance, I need to set my mind early in the day, because if I wait too late, I don't have much to give, because it takes me much longer. It takes women a lot longer to be able to give. Sometimes we can do that, but as a general rule, it's good to really prepare our minds.
Okay, let's leave you with two quick challenges. Let's determine as marrieds that we're going to make sexuality, intimacy a strength in our marriage, a strength. And then number two, let's get help. Let's get help. It is good to get input, particularly when we're struggling, to say, okay, as marrieds, we can talk about these things and have open conversation. And frankly, sometimes people can't figure some of this stuff out on their own. Sometimes it actually takes professional help, but a lot of times it's just good discipling to say, you know what, we've been through that. Let me tell you what helped us, and we can help one another. Okay?
Can I just say to that, it's important to want to get help together. We don't use that as an excuse to tell on our spouse, because that breaks down intimacy and trust. If I just go tell on my husband and what he has or hasn't done, that's going to make him feel very much less of a man, and vice versa. We have to start with the communication that we're trying until we realize we need help. And there's some things that, if done righteously, that's our marriage, that we don't have to tell every detail of. But we do have to know and agree. We have to get help. Now, I know there's exceptions to that. So don't hear me say that that's only if your spouse agrees, because there will be a time maybe that you need some help just yourself without that. But just don't make it a tattletale time to go, he's not doing what I like, I need to change him. I'm going to go tell somebody and they're going to get on him and fix him. That's not the attitude we want to have.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting us share those. I'll turn it back over to Mike for now. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. It's great to be with you guys.